WWE NXT Vengeance Day results the 2nd of April 2023. The WWE NXT Vengeance Day kickoff pre-show opens up with Matt Camp and Sam Roberts at WWE TV studios. They hype tonight's show and we see NXT champion Bron Breakker arriving to the venue earlier today. Camp says WWE Hall of Famer and Senior Vice President of Talent Development Creative Shawn Michaels has ruled that the steel cage match between Breakker and Grayson Waller must be won by pinfall or submission. They cannot win by escaping the cage. Camp sends us to Mackenzie Mitchell, who is at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, NC. She says Breakker and Grayson Waller were being kept in separate hotels, and their locker rooms are on opposite sides of the arena. She shows us footage of Apollo Crews and Carmelo Hayes having words in public on Saturday night. She sends us to a video package on tonight's 2 of 3 Falls match. Sam, Hayes and the fans all predict Hayes to win tonight's match. We get a video package for the NXT Women's title match now. We also see Toxic Attraction and NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez arriving to the venue earlier today. Sam believes Gigi Dolan will win, while Camp and fans online predict Perez will retain. We get selfie video of NXT North American Champions Lee at his hotel. He prepares to leave and says he will bring the title back. He kisses his girlfriend goodbye and she says he better bring the title back. Lee says Dijak has no chance. Sam, Camp and the fans online predict Dijak to win the title. Back from a break and we see Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen hyping up Kiana James and Fallon Henley, trying to get them to focus on tonight's title shot. Mackenzie is now with NXT Tag Team Champions The New Day at the arena. They plug their new t-shirts and talk about taking the NXT titles all over the world. Now they're here in Charlotte with some stiff competition. They get hyped up for tonight's Fatal 4-Way. We then see footage of Andre Chase hyping up Duke Hudson and Thea Hale outside of the arena on Saturday night. Sam predicts Pretty Deadly to win the titles tonight, while Camp goes with Chase U, and fans believe the New Day will retain. We see talents at the WWE Performance Center having a Vengeance Day watch party. Camp and Roberts discuss tonight's main event now. Sam goes with Waller to win, and Camp agrees. Fans online believe Breakker will retain. Camp signs off to end the kickoff pre-show, and sends us to a video package on tonight's main event. The 2023 WWE NXT Vengeance Day Premium Live event opens up with an intro video, featuring SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair introducing tonight's competitors. We're now live from the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina as Vic Joseph welcomes us to Vengeance Day. He's joined at ringside by WWE Hall of Famer Booker T. NXT North American title match, Dijak vs. Lee. We go right to the ring for the opener and out first comes NXT North American Champions Lee as Alicia Taylor does the introductions. Out next comes Dijak. The bell rings and they lock up as fans chant for Lee. Dijak shoves him back. Dijak tells Lee to just give up now. Lee applies a headlock now. Dijak fights out and levels Lee with a stiff shoulder. Dijak talks some more trash as Lee looks on. Fans rally for Lee and he baits Dijak in for a kick to the face. Lee uses his speed to evade, then he sends Dijak into the corner with scissors. They tangle and Lee springboards in from the apron to deck Dijak, sending him to the floor to regroup. Lee dropkicks Dijak through the ropes into the announce table. Lee leaps off the apron but Dijak catches him on his shoulders, then spikes him into the floor. Dijak rolls Lee back in for a 2 count. Dijak mounts Lee with strikes for another pin attempt. Dijak stomps on Lee to keep him down, then chokes him on the middle rope as the referee warns him. Dijak with back elbows in the corner. Dijak with a big throw across the ring for a 2 count. More back and forth now. Dijak catches Lee and launches him out of the ring to the floor. Dijak slams Lee into the edge of the apron, then into the barrier. Dijak manhandles Lee some more and brings him back in for a 2 count. Dijak stomps away on Lee now as fans boo. Dijak whips Lee in the corner and charges in with a big back elbow. Dijak tries this again but Lee moves and Dijak smashes into the turnbuckles, falling out to the floor to regroup. Dijak comes back in and Lee fights him off, unloading in the corner with punches. Lee dropkicks the knees out and nails a big kick while Dijak is in the corner. Dijak blocks a German suplex but Lee kicks him again. Lee tries for a German suplex again and finally hits it on the 3rd attempt for a big pop. Dijak kicks out at 2. Lee and Dijak end up on the apron, fighting from their knees. Dijak scoops Lee on his shoulders but Lee fights free. Lee backdrops Dijak from the apron to the floor. Lee runs the ring and cartwheels into a big dive to the floor, taking Dijak down to NXT. Chant. Lee brings it back in and backflips but Dijak catches him on his shoulders. Lee avoids Feast Your Eyes and turns it into a poison runner. Lee barely hits a fisherman's Michinoku driver in the middle of the ring for a 2 count. Lee goes to the top for a 450 splash but he has to roll through. Lee comes back with a superkick. Lee flies at Dijak but Dijak catches him with high justice, a close 2 count. Dijak with a modified crossface chicken wing now as Lee starts fading. Lee shakes his head and rolls to the mat but this allows Dijak to tighten the hold with a body scissors. The referee checks on Lee as he starts to fade again. Lee gets back to his feet as fans chant for him. Lee gets close to the rope but Dijak pulls him back. Lee counters Feast Your Eyes into a roll-up for 2. Lee blocks high justice and kicks Dijak in the face. Lee kicks Dijak again while he's on his knees. Dijak smiles now as fans chant NXT. And Lee keeps fighting. Lee charges but Dijak turns him inside out with a big boot for another close 2 count. They tangle again and Dijak levels Lee for another 2 count. Dijak can't believe it. Fans rally as Dijak gets up first. He grabs Lee and drags him to the corner as the referee counts. Dijak goes to the middle rope and delivers a big superpower bomb but Lee counters in midair and uses a scissors to drive Dijak into the mat head first. Lee goes up in the opposite corner and hits a corkscrew plunger for another 2 count. No one can believe Dijak kicked out. Fans chant this is awesome. Now, Dijak is on the floor for a breather. Lee charges with a suicide dive but Dijak sidesteps and sends Lee into the barrier. Dijak grabs one of the office chairs now. He traps Lee in the chair with a broomstick over his lap, then super kicks him in the face as the referee barks from the ring. Dijak goes to the top but Tony D'Angelo and Channing Stacks Lorenzo hop the barrier from the crowd, then push Lee's chair out of the way, apparently to save Lee, as Dijak flies off the top with a big dive, hitting Stacks and Tony instead of Lee. Stacks and Tony are laid out at ringside. Dijak brings Lee back in, then springboards in from the apron but Lee intercepts him with a superkick. Lee then backflips from the corner to hit the overhead kick to Dijak for the pin to win and retain. Winner, Lee. After the match, Lee stands tall as the music hits. We go to replays. Dijak recovers while Lee poses in the corner with the title in the air. Back from a break and we see Grayson Waller arriving earlier today. We also see NXT champion Bron Breakker arriving to the arena. Vic shows us a photo from the Vengeance Day watch party at the WWE Performance Center. Mackenzie Mitchell is backstage with NXT Women's Tag Team Champions Katana Chance and Kaden Carter. Chance touts their record-breaking title reign. Carter says they're not concerned with the drama their challengers have going on, they're only worried about the titles and they busted their asses to win these titles. Chance says it's time to go do what they do best. NXT Women's Tag Team Titles match, Fallon Henley and Kiana James vs Katana Chance and Kaden Carter. We go back to the ring for tonight's second title match and out first comes Kiana James and Fallon Henley with Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen. Vic wonders if Henley and James can get a win like they did in their first match together. Out next comes NXT Women's Tag Team Champions Katana Chance and Kaden Carter through the crowd. They hit the ring and dance around as the challengers look on. James starts off with Carter and they lock up. Carter drops James and stands on her with some trash talking. Jensen talks James up, while Carter goes out and spanks Jensen over the rear. James and Carter go at it now, but Chance gets involved for the double team as she tags in for a 2 count. Henley comes in and there's some miscommunication with James, but they get the upper hand on Carter and Henley covers for 2. Henley isn't interested in doing things the wrong or underhanded way here. The champs double team Henley again and Chance covers for 2. James tags back in with a back suplex to Chance for 2. James swings at Carter but she hops off the apron to avoid it. James works on Chance in the corner now. Henley tags in for the double team but Chance kicks out at 2. Henley manhandles Chance some, grounding her as fans try to rally. Jensen and Briggs continue to rally for Henley and James. Chance finally fights out of the hold and slams Henley, but she can't make the tag. Carter finally tags in but Henley misses it. Carter unloads on Henley and also James as she runs in. Carter unloads on both challengers in their corner. Carter with a big running boot to Henley to kick her to the floor next to James. Chance runs and Carter launches her to splash both challengers on the floor. Chance brings Henley back in and nails a flipping kick to the back for 2. More back and forth now. James and Carter trade offense in the ring now. James catches Carter with a spine buster for a close 2 count in the middle of the ring. Carter jumps but James gets her knees up. James sends Carter to the floor, then goes to work on Chance. Henley tags in and they double team Chance. Henley with a neck breaker, then they hit a double team driver for a 2 count as Carter makes the save. James sends Carter to the floor but misses a flip off the apron. Carter with a big cutter on the floor to take out James but she's also down. Fans chant NXT as Briggs and Jensen tend to James. Henley and Chance go at it in the ring now. Henley fights off or double team in the opposite corner. We have some technical difficulties with Peacock and come back to Henley and James celebrating with the titles. The replay shows James shoving Chance off the top to prevent a double team on Henley. Henley ended up rolling Carter for the pin while James held her for leverage from ringside. Winners and new NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, Fallon Henley and Kiana James. After the match, James and Henley begin celebrating as the music hits. We go to replays. Carter and Chance can't believe it. Briggs and Jensen celebrate with James and Henley now. We get a Twitter video from the WWE Performance Center watch party, from Drew Gulak and Hank Walker. Gulak brings up Dijak and Lee, and says how Dijak used power against Lee as their game plan all the time to counter these high flyers. Gulak asks Walker if he sees how everyone at the watch party is dressed nice. Gulak asks Walker why he's dressed like he's here to repair a sink. Walker says these are just his clothes. Gulak says they need to get him some proper ring attire because Gulak is building a superstar, not a house. We get a video from Lyra Valkyria. She says last Tuesday she was supposed to get vengeance as Cora Jade was supposed to teach her what her place in NXT is. Jade also speaks and says she will be very happy to teach Valkyria that valuable lesson. Valkyria says she guesses Jade changed her mind and she can't respect a woman who says one thing and does the opposite. Lyra says Jade's time will come and she will perish. Lyra says this Tuesday she will be standing in the middle of the ring, so who from the women's S locker room is ready to soar? We get a video package for the next match. 2 of 3 Falls match, Carmelo Hayes vs Apollo Crews. We go back to the ring for tonight's 2 of 3 Falls match as Trick Williams comes out to give a grand introduction to Carmelo Hayes. Hayes comes out wearing a shirt with his opponent's face crossed out. Hayes removes the shirt, places it on the ground and steps on it as he walks to the ring with Trick. Our video starts up and ends with Apollo Crews' intense eyes looking out. This leads to Crews making his way to the ring. The bell rings and they size each other up. They lock up and go to the mat, then come back up with a stalemate. They have a few words and lock up to trade more holds on the mat. They break again and lock up. Crews with a headlock takedown. Fans do dueling chants. They show each other up again and trade big slaps, but Crews slaps Hayes to the mat. Crews tells Hayes to get his ass back up. Hayes swings but applies a headlock. Crews shows Hayes up out of the corner. They run the ropes and Crews misses a drop kick. Hayes goes for a drop kick but Crews catches him and launches him to the corner, but Hayes lands on the middle rope. Hayes flies but Crews drop kicks him in midair for a pop. Crews keeps control and chops Hayes, then kicks him to the corner. Crews launches Hayes ribs first into the turnbuckles. Crews chops Hayes back down. Crews keeps control and hits a big German suplex. Hayes ends up pulling Crews off the apron to the floor. Trick gets in Crews' face as fans boo. Hayes tries to capitalize but Crews clotheslines him on the floor. Crews with a big moonsault off the apron to the injured ribs of Hayes on the floor. Fans chant NXT. As Crews brings it back in, then splashes Hayes from the apron. Hayes kicks out at 2. Crews with a long vertical suplex for another 2 count. Hayes ends up countering Crews and slamming him throat first over the top rope with a cutter, sending Crews to the floor. Trick, holding a steel chair, keeps teasing an attack to Crews at ringside. Hayes and Trick talk things over and Hayes brings Crews back in, mounting him with rights and lefts. Hayes with a 2 count. Hayes grounds Crews with a knee to the neck now. Crews fights free but Hayes decks him to keep him down. Hayes goes right back to grounding Crews. They get up and fight but Hayes drops Crews' neck first over the top rope. Crews kicks out at 2. Hayes covers for another quick pin attempt. They get up and trade shots. Hayes with a short arm clothesline. Trick applauds as Hayes kicks Crews around. Crews with a big German suplex out of nowhere, and another. Hayes blocks the third and lands on his feet. Crews counters a move with a big backdrop of his own. Crews with a pump kick and a clothesline. They go at it and Hayes avoids some offense but Crews keeps control. Hayes goes on and looks to springboard in from the apron but Crews meets him in midair with an enziguri. Crews goes to the top and then suplexes Hayes in from the apron while on the middle rope. Hayes still kicks out at 2 and Trick is worried at ringside. Crews calls for the finish to press Hayes high, and fans pop. Crews with a forearm and knees to the face while Hayes is on his knees. Crews presses Hayes up but Hayes slides out. Crews blocks a crossface and Hayes counters that with an arm drag. Crews covers for 2 but Hayes comes back with a big takedown for 2. Hayes is frustrated now. Hayes with a cutter for 2. Hayes goes right into the crossface now and Crews ends up tapping for the first fall. Fans boo Hayes being up 1-0 now. Hayes attacks but Crews fights out of the corner. Hayes drops Crews and keep fighting him. Crews decks Hayes but Hayes jabs him in the throat, then drops him against the ropes. Crews blocks a move and delivers 2 German suplexes, then a third. Crews with a standing shooting star press for a 2 count. Crews goes to the top but Hayes charges him. Hayes with a kick while Crews is up top. Hayes kicks Crews to the middle rope, then hits the fadeaway leg drop. Crews kicks out just in time. Crews catches Hayes with a big blockbuster DDT but Hayes kicks out. Crews can't believe it. Crews grabs Hayes from the apron and brings him up top for a superplex as fans rally. Crews falls from the top as Hayes jabs him. Crews pulls himself back to his feet and chops away. Hayes tries for a superplex now as a worried Trick watches from ringside. Hayes and Crews go for the same move but they collide and both fall to the floor at ringside. Hayes shoves Cruz and rushes back in at the 7 count, but Cruz rushes back in to make it right before the 10 count. Cruz talks some trash for Hayes trying to get a cheap win. Cruz with a knee to the jaw. They tangle and Cruz blocks a crossface, then hits an angle slam. Hayes comes right back with a codebreaker. Cruz keeps fighting and drops Hayes, but they're both down now. Trick goes to the apron to expose the top turnbuckle while the referee is checking on Hayes and Cruz. Fans boo. Cruz eats a strike and yells out, then unloads on Hayes with strikes. Cruz counters and Trick's exposed turnbuckle backfires as Hayes is sent into the exposed turnbuckle. Trick brings a chair to the apron, but Dabba-Kato, the former Commander Aziz, runs down and knocks Trick off the apron. Trick is shocked, but Cruz clotheslines him to the floor. Dabba-Kato slaps hands with Cruz, but Cruz turns around to a flying clothesline from Hayes. Hayes goes to the top and hits the nothing but net leg drop to Cruz for the pin to sweep the match 2-0. Winner, Carmelo Hayes. After the match, Hayes and Trick celebrate as the music hits. We go to replays. Hayes and Trick head to the back as Dabba-Kato looks on. Dabba-Kato comes in the ring and helps Cruz to his feet. They smile and hug now as fans cheer. Dabba-Kato changes the look on his face, then headbutts Cruz to the mat as fans boo. Dabba-Kato then nails a sit-down powerbomb to Cruz. We get a selfie video from Valentina Foroz and Wendy Chu at the watch party. Foroz has accepted Lyra Valkyria's challenge for Tuesday. Chu thinks she can get the win. Elektra Lopez walks up and says Foroz may need help. Chu says she won't need help, but if she needs support, Chu will be in her corner. Lopez walks off. Foroz welcomes Lyra to her jungle. We see new NXT Women's Tag Team Champions Fallon Henley and Kiana James celebrating backstage with Brooks Jensen and Josh Briggs. They can't believe they did it. James says this was all Jensen's idea. Jensen loves the pairing. Briggs raises 2 champagne bottles and says it's time to go party. NXT champion Bron Breakker is shown backstage taping up for the main event. The Black History Month video for NXT Tag Team Champion Kofi Kingston is shown. We see footage of Chase U outside of the arena on Saturday night with hometown star Andrew Chase hyping up Duke Hudson and Thea Hale. Fatal 4-way for the NXT Tag Team titles, Chase University vs Gallus vs Pretty Deadly vs The New Day. We go back to the ring for tonight's Fatal 4-way, and out first comes Chase University, Duke Hudson and hometown star Andre Chase with Thea Hale. Vic says Chase's family and friends are in attendance, including his brother, former star Lance Bravado. We see the Chase U student section in the crowd. Out next comes Kit Wilson and Delton Prince of Pretty Deadly. Mark Coffey and Wolfgang of Gallus are out next. NXT Tag Team Champions The New Day are out next, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. Alicia Taylor does formal ring introductions. Kofi and Prince start things off. Kofi fights out of a headlock. Kofi runs the ropes as Woods tags in. Kofi with a takedown and a chop. Woods chops Prince and works him over. Woods sends Prince to the floor, then Wilson to the apron. Prince has Wilson on his shoulders now as they taunt the other teams. Kofi runs and baseball slides to knock them over. Hale screams at Pretty Deadly through her megaphone to knock them back down. Woods flies out and attacks them next. Woods brings Prince in for a suplex as Hudson tags in. Hudson pushes the suplex over, then goes to work on Prince. Wilson ends up coming in, but Chase tags in and rocks him. Kofi tags Chase out, then takes Wilson down by his arm. Wolfgang tags in and takes over on Wilson. Kofi tags right back in for the double team on Wilson. He begs everyone to stop chopping him. Woods tags in and unloads on Kofi. Kofi with a knee to the gut. Wolfgang tags in and nails a sliding back splash to Woods to keep him down. Prince ends up tagging in and unloading on Woods to keep him down in the corner. Prince talks trash to Woods and nails a vertical suplex for 2. Woods fights back but Prince rams him into the corner. Wilson tags in for the double team but Woods kicks out at 2. Fans rally for the New Day now and Woods fights free. Wilson decks him and drops a series of elbows. Prince tags back in for the double team chops on Woods. Wilson kicks Woods on his way out as Prince keeps the assault going. Prince keeps the attack going on Woods, then knocks Chase U off the apron with a cheap shot. Fans rally for Woods now while Kofi waits. Kofi tags in and leaps off the top to deck Prince, then Wilson. Kofi also drops Gallus on the apron, then dropkicks Prince and nails a flying right hand, then one for Wilson. Kofi runs in but he also takes a flying right hand from Kofi. Kofi with a boom drop to Kofi, Prince and Wilson at once. Kofi goes for trouble in paradise on Prince but he ducks. Kofi nails So's for a 2 count as Wilson makes the save. Chase runs in and kicks Wilson. Wolfgang drops Chase. Duke drops Wolfgang. Prince drops Duke. Woods rocks Prince. Kofi drops Woods. Kofi drops Kofi. Prince scoops Kofi and Pretty Deadly nails a double team gutbuster. Prince covers for 2. Pretty Deadly double teams Kofi some more while everyone else is down at ringside. Kofi sends Wilson to the floor, then meets Prince with a big boot. Woods with the backbreaker to Prince, holding him there for Kofi's double stomp from the top. They cover but the others all rush in the ring to break the pin up. Everyone is down again, trying to recover. Hail screams and fans chant "This is awesome." Now, things fall apart as the referee is busy trying to restore order at ringside. Chase and Kofi fight up top. Chase sends Kofi flying to the floor, on top of everyone else. Wilson runs the apron and knocks Chase off the top turnbuckle. Wilson goes for a superplex but Chase fights. Chase launches Wilson with a superplex to the floor, and they land on the other 6 superstars. Hail screams out and the crowd pops big. Chase gets up first and fights with Gallus but they send him into the top of the announce table. Gallus takes apart the table now. Duke saves Chase, taking Gallus out. Duke takes the top off the announce table, and the monitors, as fans pop. Pretty Deadly drops Duke. They go to put Duke through the table with a double suplex but he fights them off. Duke tries to put Wilson through the table but Prince saves him and decks Duke with a big shot. Pretty Deadly puts the top back on the announce table as fans boo. They come back into double team Duke but he nails a double clothesline. Duke unloads on Wilson, then Prince in the corner. Duke with a big overhead toss to Prince. Kofi attacks but Duke takes him out. Duke kips up for a pop. Duke warms up for the kick, then knocks Wolfgang off the apron. Kofi retreats. Duke goes to the floor to attack both of Gallus but they double choke slam him through the announce table. Fans chant NXT. Now, Gallus enters the ring to double team Chase but he fights them off. He dumps Wolfgang to the floor then fights Kofi off with signature offense. Chase stomps on Kofi as the hometown crowd spells CHASEU. With him. Chase goes to the top and hits a big crossbody to Kofi for 2. Chase with the figure 4 in the middle of the ring now. Kofi goes for the bottom rope but Wolfgang flies off the top with a swanton to break the submission. Chase is double teamed by Gallus with the finisher but he kicks out. The New Day takes Gallus out. Kofi leaps to the floor on Pretty Deadly but they catch him and take him out with spilt milk on the floor. Woods and Kofi go at it in the ring. Woods drops Kofi. Woods springboards in but Wolfgang catches him in midair, then Gallus hits the big double team. Kofi covers in the middle of the ring for the pin to win the titles. Winners and new NXT Tag Team Champions, Gallus. After the match, the music hits and Gallus recovers. We go to replays. Kofi and Wolfgang pose with their titles as the other teams struggle to recover. We get a video for the next match. Triple threat for the NXT Women's title, Gigi Dolan vs Jacy Jayne vs Roxanne Perez. We go back to the ring for tonight's triple threat co-main event, and out first comes Toxic Attraction, Gigi Dollin and JC Jane. Out next comes NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez. Alicia Taylor does formal ring introductions. Fans chant for Perez as the bell hits. They surround Perez and she fights them both off to start. They beat Perez down in the middle of the ring and slam her face first into the mat. Perez goes for a double crossbody but they catch her and hit a double team backbreaker. Perez goes to the floor but they bring her back in. Perez kicks Dollin away and unloads but Jane attacks from behind. Jane lays Perez out. Jane accidentally drops Dollin and then apologizes. Perez with a double dropkick. More back and forth now. Perez sends them to the floor with a double arm drag takedown. Perez then runs the ring for a suicide dive to Dollin. Jane leaps off the apron but takes down Dollin instead. Jane can't believe what she did. Perez rocks Jane and rolls her back in. Perez stomps and nails a senton for 2. Perez with a crossface submission now. They fight to their feet while Dollin is still down at ringside. Jane with a neckbreaker to Perez. Jane mounts Perez with strikes, then screams out to Booze. Jane talks trash in her face now, then chops her away. Jane keeps control for a close 2 count, then grounds Perez with trash talking. Fans rally and Perez fights out but Jane clotheslines her. Dollin pulls Jane to the floor and yells at Hours. Jane says they need to work together and focus. Perez runs for a big dive but Dollin pulls Jane in the way and Jane gets dropped. Dollin unloads on Perez now, kicking her against the steel ring steps. Dollin launches Perez into the barrier. Dollin and Perez fight on the apron. Perez gets dropped, then slammed in the middle of the ring for 2 as Jane broke the pin up. Dollin isn't happy. Jane covers Perez but Dollin pulls her off. Jane and Dollin have words and now they're shoving each other, with more force in each shove. Dollin slaps Jane. Jane attacks and they go at it. Jane with a 2 count. Dollin with a roll up for 2. Perez leaps off the top with a crossbody to both challengers. Perez runs wild now, going from corner to corner on both challengers. Perez with a Russian leg sweep DDT combo for 2 on Jane, then 2 on Dollin. Fans rally for Perez but Jane catches her in midair. Jane turns Perez upside down on Dollin while she's down in the corner. Jane keeps control, stomps on Perez, then nails a corner cannonball on both opponents. Jane with a big running knee to Perez but Dollin breaks the pin up. Dollin and Jane butt heads in the middle of the ring, now they're trading big right hands. They unload on each other now and Jane levels Dollin, then crotch chops her. Perez rolls Jane for 2, and again. Jane knees Perez to the mat, then backsplashes her in the corner. Perez blocks Jane and goes for pop rocks but Dollin stops her. Dollin kicks Jane down, then nails a bridging suplex to Perez for 2 but Jane breaks it up with a senton. Fans chant for each competitor now as all 3 meet on their knees in the middle of the ring, trading strikes. They fight to their feet and Perez takes control. Perez screams out but they drop her with a double superkick. Dollin headbutts Jane and Jane falls on Perez, while Dollin falls on Perez for a double 2 count. Jane and Dollin team up on Perez now and fans pop as Dollin tells Jane to get the tables. They bring a table from under the ring and stand it up at ringside. Perez blocks a double team slam through the table. She keeps fighting both competitors, then hits pop rocks to Dollin on the floor. Perez fights Dollin off and drops her, then rolls Jane back into the ring. Fans chant table. Now. Perez goes to the top but Jane rocks her and climbs up. Jane goes up but Perez fights her off and takes control on the top. Perez kicks to knock Dollin off the apron, through the table at ringside. Perez then follows up with a super pop rocks to Jane, slamming her to the mat and covering for the pin to retain. Winner, Roxanne Perez. After the match, Perez stands tall as the music hits. We go to replays. Perez raises the title in the air and makes her exit while Lynn and Jane try to recover. Back from a break and we see the steel cage being lowered around the ring. We get a video package for the main event. Steel cage match for the NXT title, Grayson Waller vs Bron Breakker. We see Grayson Waller walking backstage, wearing chainmail, with a woman carrying his golden sneaker. We also see NXT champion Bron Breakker walking backstage. We go back out and Waller's music hits. It looks like he has the NBA's Charlotte Hornets cheerleaders in his entrance. They're dancing around with champagne bottles. Waller heads to the cage and he's fired up. The music hits and out next comes Breakker to a big pop. He smashes through one of the large Waller vs Breakker posters as he comes through the back. Breakker approaches the cage but Waller smashes him with the door, knocking him down at ringside. Waller works Breakker over to boos at ringside. Breakker fights back and tries to smash Waller into the barrier but Waller moves and Breakker puts on the brakes. Waller struts but Breakker drops him, then sends him into the barrier as fans bark. Waller swings the cage door in Waller's face now and he goes down. Breakker brings Waller in the cage and the door is locked by a referee. They both get up and the bell rings with Waller looking a bit worried. Waller goes to climb but Breakker snatches him to the mat. The only way to win this match is by pinfall or submission, no escaping the cage. Waller fights back but Breakker charges and runs over him to more barking from the crowd. Breakker with a long vertical suplex, then a kip up. Breakker with a standing moonsault that barely connects. Waller rocks Breakker but it just angers him. Waller goes to climb but Breakker stops him. Waller rocks Breakker again, then again. Waller counters a move with a big DDT for 2. Waller mocks Breakker with chirps now as fans boo. Waller takes his time working Breakker over now. Breakker fights back with elbows to the ribs but Breakker kicks him for a 1 count. Waller keeps control and goes to put Bron's face into the steel but Bron blocks it. Bron runs into a big boot in the corner. Waller rolls for a DDT but Bron blocks it and slams him. Breakker mounts more offense with a big power slam. Bron goes to the top and connects with a big bulldog. Bron looks to finish Waller early, chasing him round the cage. Bron charges but hits the steel head first when Waller moves. Waller covers for 2. Waller wastes some time in talking trash but now he stomps away to keep Bron down as fans boo. Waller with big right hands now. Waller drops Bron with a right, dazing him. Waller sends Bron face first into the steel for a 2 count. Waller shows off some, then goes back to working on Bron while he's down in the corner. Waller splashes Bron against the steel but he gets back up, stumbling. Waller leaps again but Bron catches him in midair. Waller rakes the eyes, then sends Bron face first into the steel again. Waller with a modified blockbuster for 2. Waller keeps Bron down and smiles as fans boo. Bron fights back in the corner while Waller is sitting on the top. Bron charges and launches Waller to the mat with a big Frankensteiner. Waller still kicks out at 2. Bron leaps off the top but Waller meets him in midair with a jumping knee. Waller then goes to the top and hits the flying elbow drop for a close 2 count. Waller kicks Bron while he's down. Waller traps Bron in the ropes by his arms now, and works him over. Waller charges and kicks Bron while he's still stuck in the top and middle rope. Fans boo Waller. Waller mocks Breakker now while Bron is stuck. Waller with a running spear while Bron is still trapped. Bron is furious now. He breaks free and Waller is terrified. Waller goes to climb but Waller slams him to the mat from the top rope. Bron slams Waller face first into the steel several times. Bron presses Waller high above his head, then launches him into the steel, forcing him to fall on the top rope, then the mat. Bron charges but Waller jumps above him and Bron puts the brakes on. Waller with a low blow to stun Breakker. Waller then nails a stunner for a close 2 count. Waller is frustrated. Fans chant Waller sucks. And let's go Waller. Now. Waller goes to the top of the cage now, but he's taking some time. Waller stands on top of the cage as Bron stands back up on his feet. Waller changes his mind on jumping from the top of the cage, then goes to climb back down. Bron meets him on the cage. Waller now goes to climb to the floor, but Bron grabs him and brings him to the mat from the top of the cage with a big superplex. Fans bark and chant NXT. Now. Bron levels Waller with a power slam after dropping the straps. But he's not going for the pin, and Vic wonders if he's making a mistake. Bron grabs Waller and yells in his face about talking trash. Bron says this is his dog pound, he runs NXT. Waller is dazed, but he slaps Bron while on his knees. Bron runs the ring and levels Waller with a spear for the pin to win and retain. Winner, Bron Breakker. After the match, Bron stands tall as the music hits. We go to replays. Bron poses on the top of the cage now, yelling out and raising the NXT title in the air. Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams come out to the stage now. They look up at Breakker as he continues his celebration and fans cheer him on. Breakker stands up on top of the cage and raises the NXT title in the air as Vengeance Day goes off the air.